Wiring diagram versus schematic. What is the actual difference? Here is the same little circuit drawn two ways. On the left, a schematic. On the right, a wiring diagram. Same battery, same switch, same lamp, but two completely different pictures. By the end of this, you will know exactly what each one shows, when to reach for which, and how to read both at a glance. No jargon, no mis. Let's line them up side by side and make the difference obvious. So let us not bury the answer. Here it is in one line. A schematic shows how a circuit works. A wiring diagram shows how to physically connect it. That is the whole difference in a sentence. A schematic is about the electrical logic, what connects to what, and why the circuit does its job. A wiring diagram is about the build, the real parts, the real terminals, and where every single wire actually lands. One is for understanding. The other is for installing. Keep those two words in your head, understand versus install, and everything else in this video just fills in the detail. Start with the schematic. Look at it closely. Every part is a standard symbol. The battery is two clean lines, long and short. The switch is a little hinge break in the line. The lamp is a circle with a cross through it. Nobody drew the real object. They drew the agreed symbol for it, the same symbol an engineer anywhere in the world would recognize. And the lines between them are not wires. They are connections. They only tell you what is joined to what. The schematic is drawn for one purpose, to make the electrical logic clear. It answers the question, how does this circuit work? That is why designers, engineers, and anyone trying to understand a circuit reach for a schematic first. Now, the wiring diagram, the same circuit, but a completely different job. Here the parts are not neat symbols. They look like the real things, a battery block with a plus post and a minus post, a switch with two actual terminals, a lamp with a socket. And the lines are not abstract connections anymore. They are real wires, running from a specific screw on one part to a specific screw on another, routed the way cable actually runs in a box. The wiring diagram does not care about teaching you the theory. It answers one practical question. Where does every wire go? It is the drawing you print out and follow when you're actually building, installing, or repairing the thing. Here is the single cleanest way to tell them apart, a test you can use forever. On a schematic, the position of a part means nothing. Slide the switch to the other side of the page, flip the lamp upside down. As long as the connections are the same, it is the exact same circuit. Only what connects to what carries meaning. Layout is just for readability. On a wiring diagram, position is everything. Move a part, and you have changed where the wire physically has to run. The layout is the information. It mirrors reality, where the parts actually sit and how the cable actually travels between them. So ask yourself one question. Does moving a part change the meaning? If no, you're holding a schematic. If yes, you're holding a wiring diagram. Symbolic versus physical. Function versus layout. That is the real fault line. Let's put in a clean side-by-side so it sticks. A schematic is about function. A wiring diagram is about layout. A schematic uses standard symbols. A wiring diagram uses realistic parts. On a schematic, the lines mean connections. On a wiring diagram, the lines are real wire runs. Position does not matter on a schematic. Position is everything on a wiring diagram. A schematic answers, how does it work? A wiring diagram answers, where does each wire go? You reach for the schematic to understand or design. You reach for the wiring diagram to build, install, or repair. Same circuit, top to bottom. Two drawings, two jobs. That is the entire comparison in one table. Now here is the part most beginners miss. A professional does not pick one. A good electrician or engineer uses both in order. You design on the schematic. That is where you work out the logic, what connects to what, whether the circuit even makes sense. Get it right in symbols first, where mistakes are cheap. Then you produce the wiring diagram from it. Now you decide where each part physically sits and route the real wires to the real terminals. That is what you actually build and install from. Design in the schematic, build from the wiring diagram. They are not rivals. They are two views of the same circuit, and a pro moves between them without thinking twice. On a big job, you might even sketch a rough block diagram first, then a schematic, then the wiring diagram, abstract to physical in that order. A few quick tips for reading each one. On a schematic, follow the lines as pure connections, not as physical wires. A line crossing another does not mean they touch unless there is a solder dot. Learn the handful of common symbols: battery, resistor, switch, lamp, ground, and most schematics open right up. On a wiring diagram, trust the layout because it is telling you the truth about where things are. Watch the wire colors and the terminal labels. On a real wiring diagram, those are gold. They tell you exactly which wire lands on which screw. And notice that a wiring diagram is usually messier looking than a schematic, precisely because it is honoring physical reality instead of tidiness. And the best way to lock this in is to draw both yourself. In a free editor that runs right in your browser, CircuitDiagramMaker.app, you can drop a battery, a switch, and a lamp from the symbol library and join them with clean lines. That is your schematic. Then lay the same parts out to match the physical box. Wire them terminal to terminal, and you have a wiring diagram. Same circuit, both views side by side. No install, no sign up. The link is below. Open it in a second tab and draw along. So, wiring diagram versus schematic. Let's lock it in. A schematic shows how a circuit works. Standard symbols, connections, position does not matter. A wiring diagram shows how to physically build it. Realistic parts, real terminals, and position is everything. Understand versus install. Function versus layout. Ask the one question, does moving a part change the meaning? And you will never confuse the two again. Quick note, if you're also wondering about circuit diagram versus schematic, that is a different comparison, and I made a separate video on it. Short version, for the drawing itself, those two are basically the same thing, and the real difference is exactly the one you just learned, the wiring diagram. Now open the free editor and draw both yourself, schematic first, then the wiring diagram beside it. The link is below. Subscribe for a new diagram explained every week, and I will see you in the next one.